1. Sunday morning rolls around, and my family and I get ready to head to the markets as per our weekly ritual. When we arrived, we parked and headed into the racecourse, where the markets were held. We were walking around for about 30 minutes or so before my mum found an antique stall. She fell in love with a wooden TV unit. It was beautifully stained oak wood, with stained glass on the side cupboard doors, and solid oak on the front cupboards. As soon as she saw it, she bought it instantly, and got her now ex-husband to take it to the car. It was too heavy for any of my siblings and I to help, so we all ended up going to the car. Once the unit was loaded in and my mum was satisfied it was well hidden and safe, we headed back to the stall as my mum had seen a bookcase and chest that looked to be a set with the unit. We arrived back at the same spot, but the stall had disappeared. My mum asked the neighboring stalls if they knew where the antique stall had gone, and everyone said the same thing. There are no antique stalls here. Defeated and confused, my mum decided that was it for the markets, and we headed home. First night the unit was brought into the house. I heard loud knocking coming from the living room. It grew louder and only continued for about 30 seconds, but it was enough to make me sleep under my blanket the rest of the night in 30 degrees Celsius. Next morning, after walking into the kitchen to get ready for school, feeling like death, I saw that my older brother and mum had similar tiredness as me. I was too tired to ask, but thankfully my brother did it anyways, and come to find out they both heard the exact same knocking from the night before. It happened daily. 2 weeks later it got worse, at around 2 or 3 a.m. A couple of weeks after, I saw a figure standing in my doorway looking away from me. Took my chance and slipped under my blanket again. This continued happening, and the figure kept creeping closer and closer every night I woke. 2 days later, my mum encountered a man in a wheelchair sitting at the end of her bed, staring at her and her ex, watching them sleep. On the same night, my older brother saw a woman float past his room at the back of the house, facing the backyard with only her upper half. The window was only on top of 1/3 of the wall, so about 3 or 4 meters above the ground. My mum's ex didn't believe her until he woke up one day in the middle of the night. This has now been about 3 days after my brother's sighting. That was the final straw for us. We found a new rental within 2 days and left everything behind. To whoever moved in after us, we hope you made it. We hope you were able to stay hidden. We hope you were able to stay quiet. 2. Hello everyone. Good night. I live in Germany now, but the report took place in southern Brazil, in the state of Parana, in 2021. A brief summary of how I ended up in this situation. In 2020, I discovered cancer, so I had surgery, chemo, and so on for a few months. I finished treatment in 2021. I was in the bath and felt something strange. The surgery site had ruptured after 5 months and was oozing pus and blood. I despaired. My father has a quarry with an open mine of about 120 meters in diameter and 20 meters deep. It is a place far from the city, about 8 kilometers, in the middle of the woods and with some family farms nearby. I loved the place and decided to go there to think about what to do. I was afraid to restart the treatment, afraid that maybe the cancer had come back with a vengeance. There is a place where the crushing plant used to be, exactly where the trucks uploaded to the grinder. To take advantage of the force of gravity, it is located on the slope of a ravine, about 30 to 40 meters high, with an incredible view of the horizon. I parked my truck there and lay on top of it and watched the shooting stars. I don't know exactly how many hours later, but it should have been something like midnight. I hear footsteps slowly coming towards me. I was armed with a pistol, but I left it inside, and I was in the back of the truck. All I had was a piece of wood lying there. At the time I was scared of it being a criminal, as we had problems with thieves stealing machine parts. But the sound came from right beside the cliff, and it's impossible for anyone to walk up. I even went back to check later. My second thought was that it was a jaguar, and because I'd been lying down for a long time, whether it was a jaguar or a criminal, he might have thought I had fallen asleep. As the steps got closer, I deduced that he was already on my side. I looked without moving my head, and I didn't see anything that was the height of a person. So I jumped up with a piece of wood and screamed because it had to be an animal. Then I saw something I've never seen. Never seen anything like it before. And I get goosebumps just thinking about it. A human figure, completely dark brown. It had no eyes, no mouth, no ears. It looked like thick smoke. It walked very clumsily, as if twisting. When I jumped, he still hadn't finished climbing. I froze. He finished the climb. It passed by my side about a meter. It was on top of the pickup, and I deduced that it was less than my height of 1.9 meters. When I jumped up and screamed, he did absolutely nothing. Passed by me and followed the opposite path I took to get there, left the road and entered the forest. In that, I took the gun inside the car. He walked for a while, and came out again into the clearing, and started coming towards me. The night was very clear, with an almost full moon. When he got a safe distance as he came towards me, I started shooting. I shot 10 times. I remembered that I still had 12 rounds because when I arrived I fired a few shots. I landed all the shots as I approached. It didn't do anything. Didn't seem to hit anything. At that distance, I'd never missed. But he stopped, went back to the bush. The rest of the night he walked in a semicircle about 50 meters from me into the woods, out into the clear and into the woods on the other side. When dawn began, he entered the forest, and I could hear the footsteps in the distance. I grew up there. I know every inch of it. I'm 32 years old. My childhood and youth was spent walking around and going into the forest. You've never seen anything like it. When I asked my father, he just said it wasn't good to go there alone at night because there's something strange. He came the other day early because they were looking for me, because I had left without warning and left my cell phone at home, and he figured I would be there. Has anyone heard of something similar? 3. I know this all sounds so far-fetched, especially when you get to the last paragraph, but I swear it happened. I commented the first part of this experience on someone's post a while back, and then the rest of it happened afterward. This all took place between July 2022 and February 2023. Rural community, cute subdivision, not a place where weird stuff happens. We, 32 female, 32 male, 10 female, and 10 male, bought our new house this past July from a retired minister and his wife. As soon as we started moving in, we noticed a weird bumping and thumping coming from the master bedroom closet shortly after sunset every evening. At this time, we were all sleeping on mattresses in the living room waiting for our furniture to be moved. We just sold our respective houses, and we were combining households. We had a plumber come check things out to make sure it wasn't just pipes thumping. It wasn't. We moved our furniture in over the next few weeks, and life continued as normal. We still heard the thump from upstairs. Sounded like an animal jumping down off of something up high. And noticed some other odd things happening. The light in our entryway and our garage would randomly be turned on some days when we got home. And so we decided to install cameras in front of the entries to see if, maybe, someone had our access code. Code entry, no key entry. To the front door, and was stopping by for whatever reason. We also had a friend who is an electrician check out our wiring to make sure everything looked okay. No electrical issues, no visitors. One night, my partner was away at work on night shift, and I was sitting on the couch watching TV while my son slept upstairs. Stepdaughter was at her mom's for the evening. And I keep seeing little flashes coming from in front of the oven. I thought maybe there was a car passing by in the main road, so I checked the doorbell camera and nothing had driven by. Then I discovered maybe the oven light was flickering on or something, so I watched the oven for a minute to see if it would come on. Instead, I saw what almost looked like a blue linen move from one side of the doorway to the other. Then the noises started. First, I heard the thumping coming from upstairs in the master bedroom. Then the dining room, the kitchen, the entryway, and back up the stairs. I texted my partner and said something's going on in this house, and either I am losing my mind or some weird spirit shit is going on. But I feel like I'm under attack, and asked him to come home. In the meantime, I went upstairs to my bedroom with both my cats and waited. The house started to hum in a way that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was like static electricity had filled the air. I heard for a split second, I saw my grandmother, who had passed away a few years back, standing at the foot of my bed, wearing a blue linen top and pants. But I didn't know it at the time. And I was terrified, so I called out, "Enough!" And it was gone. The air calmed down, the anxiety left, the house was quiet. I immediately messaged my cousin and said, "Holy shit, dude, I think I just saw Nanny in the house. I need you to tell me I'm not fucking nuts." And described what I'd seen, to which she sent me a photo of her and said, "This outfit?" And told me it was the outfit my grandmother had been buried in. I didn't attend the visitation parlor to the funeral because I lived hours away at the time and just moved back to my hometown in July, so I didn't know this. My partner came home around 11:30 p.m. and laughed at me because I'd sweat my entire body outline into our sheets. I told him what happened. We changed the sheets and sat up for a while being reasonably freaked out, and then just went to bed. The next morning, I thought I'd gone bonkers, so I messaged a medium my friend recommended, and we met a couple weeks later, and she told me she felt my grandmother was coming around to try and warn me about something and to stay alert. This was in December. 2 months later, the next time my son and I were the only ones in the house, we were woken up shortly after midnight to the neighbor kicking our front door in and screaming for us to get out because our house was burning down with us inside it. The fire marshals inspected after the fire was out and told us there was an issue with the chimney and evidence that every time we started a fire in our wood stove, when it started getting cold around November, there was more than likely a small fire smoldering in our walls, drying out the wood, until it eventually dried out enough to catch fire inside the wall and burn through. No one will ever convince me she wasn't there to try and warn us. Everyone survived, the house burned to the ground, and it was the most terrifying experience of my life. 4. This is my tale from back in the spring of 2013. I was between 12 and 13 years old, and my mom and dad had recently separated. So my mom took my 2 brothers and me and ended up finding and moving into this house that the owner had divided the house into 4 separate apartments. Now, before I continue, I'll give a bit of context. At the time, I lived in Aurora, Illinois. The house in the story is located at the dead end of a street. Now, we moved into this apartment around my last year in middle school. The apartment itself was fairly small, with a small kitchen, bathroom, living room, and 1 bedroom. Everything was mostly carpet, except the kitchen and bathroom, which had the same tile flooring. There was also a large square tile that was much different than the kitchen and bathroom, which again were both the same. It divided the living room, bedroom, and bathroom. This square tile will be very important in the story. The event and experiences happened at night, anywhere from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. I remember every time I would wake up in the middle of the night, every night around the exact same time. I would always get woken with the enormous feeling of being watched, and having a strong presence of seeing shadows moving across the walls in my room. I could tell that something had opened the bedroom door moments before I opened my eyes and woke up. When I would turn to face the door, it was open in a way wide enough for someone to peek in with an eye into the room, only to see no one was there. But I could tell there was. Now, I am not a paranoid person, but in a way, I have strong senses, especially when people are staring or giving off bad vibes in a way. It's hard to describe. But back to the story. This would happen pretty much nightly for me. Sometimes my brother, who was the second oldest, would feel it too, but force himself to sleep. I couldn't, though. One night I woke my brother up and decided to go out into the living room, stepping over the square tile, which we felt emanating a strong presence that was freaking me and my brother out. We decided to step into the living room, and again, the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Being watched from the corner of the room, behind the furniture, and even outside through the windows was strong. Eventually, my brother and I found nothing, but both of us stood still and stiff in that living room waiting for something to happen. Eventually, the door to our apartment opened, and it was our mother who was coming in from work, and eventually we told her the intuition that we both had, but she brushed it off as us having wild imagination and scolding us for maybe watching bad things on TV. Another event happened when my mom, brothers, and I were having dinner, and out of nowhere she got up from her seat and rushed over to the bedroom and slammed open the door and looked around. We asked her what was wrong, but she said it was nothing. We didn't live in that house for too long, maybe over half a year. We moved to California in the autumn of 2013. Around my late years in high school, I remember that I and my brother, the second oldest, recalled the experiences we had and told our mother. To our surprise, she agreed with us. That day we were having dinner and she slammed open the door. She told us that there was a strong and horrible presence watching us and that she reacted to it. She said that she didn't want to tell us because she didn't want us to be even more afraid or worried. We all agreed that we were experiencing something paranormal or otherworldly. Especially that square tile that divided the living room, bathroom, and bedroom was the main hotspot for it. It has been 10 or 11 years since then, and I'm now 23 years old, so I can't recall much from those events that I had. Probably from how terrified I was. Any questions, feel free to ask. I do recall the house and area surroundings, but I'm not going to disclose that information, as that house is probably still being used for renting, and it is not a place for paranormal touring. This has been, so far, my only and first unexplainable experience. 5. In the late 2000s, a man on an oxygen tank lit a cigarette up, and he blew up along with the house I now live in. This is an important detail to the other connections. It is a sad story, but he is still there in his spirit. We moved in about 10 years ago into this brand new home that was rebuilt. It has a basement from the original house and a garage that had a hole burned into the roof from the fire. Those are the only things I think keep him here in spirit. We just moved into our new home and all goes well. I was younger when we moved in. I was kind of nervous being alone. That was normal for someone my age. The first incident. I was in bed one night and I hear the floor creak. I think nothing of it and I go back to bed. This goes on for years. I wake up and hear footsteps and I don't feel alone. It was scary as a child, but it doesn't bother me anymore. The second incident. I wake up one night to the smell of smoke. It smells weird though. It was a smell of cigarette smoke. My parents at the time smoked, so I blamed it on that. They later quit and I still smell it. I also never feel alone when this happens. This happens about every 2 weeks and I got used to it. The third incident. I was down in the basement, on the phone with my grandmother, and something goes across my face. It was black and I got a big chill down my spine as I ran up the stairs. I was really upset and my grandmother calmed me down, saying it was okay and it was nothing to worry about. The fourth incident. We were about to sell our house and tear down the shed. Some background info on the shed. It was a workshop built by the old owner in the late 60s or 70s. Just a guess, it was old. I think it was a special spot for him. His memories are there. I go to bed the other night and I sleep with my headphones listening to something to fall asleep like an audiobook. I get ready and fall asleep and wake up to my mother in my room. I answer, "Yes, what do you want?" I get no answer. I look for my phone after asking her and she won't answer me. I grab it and use the screen as a flashlight. She is gone. I go to text her and ask what the hell just happened. I change my mind so I don't freak her out. As soon as my head touches the pillow, I fall asleep. Literally, this isn't normal for me. I wake up to tapping on the face. I see something in my face, right in my face. So close I can't even describe it. It stays there a second. I just thought it was my mom again. I get the phone quickly and look around and see nothing. I go back to bed and woke up the next day. I forgot this happened when I woke up, and I continued on like I normally do. I told my grandmother the next day after I got a flashback. I've had bad flashbacks due to PTSD, and I tell her. I told my mom a few days later. I think the explanation was he didn't want his family to move and tear down his shed that he was attached to. The 5th incident. The day after I had something in my face, I woke up to a bad pain in my stomach. I don't get sick. I get up and go to the bathroom and I lay on the floor. I was thinking about how I just want to die. The pain was that bad. I felt like I was stabbed. I go back to my room and I smell cigarette smoke. He did it to me. He is communicating to me and I want to keep communicating with him. He isn't bad. He is an older man in spirit who is lonely and sometimes wants someone alive thinking about him. What do you think about this? This just goes to show all spirits aren't bad. Sometimes they just need someone. As I write this, I smell smoke of a cigarette. He is with me watching. I can feel he is on the left side next to my chair. I think he's going to wake me tonight because he is happy we aren't moving. But he is pissed that the shed was taken down. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 323. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, if you could please hit that like button, I would appreciate it. Thank you kindly. Right, no other business, so let's go straight to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: when you find yourself in a situation you want to get out of, you're at an event, a party, a meeting, something that you just don't want to be there anymore for whatever reason, and it's time for you to go. Do you make a polite excuse that may not be entirely true, or are you just upfront with the person? Sorry, tea. I think in my case, it would depend on the person, whether or not I like them. I'll try to be gentle and sugarcoat it, but I won't lie. Unless I think it would be really upset by the lie. But generally speaking, I'm upfront. If I don't want to be in the place, I'll just say, I've got to go. If they ask why, I'll say, well, I've got other stuff to do, which generally means not being there. And if they press, I'll just say, I don't want to be here anymore. I like to be polite, but if someone pushes me, then I will be blunt without trying to be offensive. It's like, I've given you an out to just let it go. You've pushed me far enough. Okay, here's the raw answer. I think that's generally how things work for me in most situations, to be honest with you. But maybe you're different. Do you always sugarcoat it? Are you always blunt? Or do people just think you're rude in general? Because that can happen and you don't mean it. Please pop your answers in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.